3 spine-chilling, true, urban exploration tales of cursed places and sinister secrets revealed. Mike had heard the stories, whispers that danced on the edges of every gathering like shadows. Ironwood High, they said, was cursed. It loomed at the outskirts like a dark sentinel, filled with the ghosts of the students who had perished there. Bravo to the brave souls who dared to step within its crumbling walls. But tonight, under a sky bruised with the purple of dusk, Mike was ready to face it. He needed something, anything, to jolt him out of the monotony of working nights at the grocery store and the relentless worry of bills and school supplies. Armed with his camera, he hoped to unravel the sinister tapestry woven through Ironwood's eerie halls. As he approached the school, a bone-deep chill washed over him. The setting sun cast jagged silhouettes against the peeling paint of the facade, making the windows seem like dark, soulless eyes watching his every move. "Stay away from Ironwood. You have no idea what lurks there." He recalled the ominous texts from his friends, but who needed caution when the promise of adventure throbbed through his veins? Ignoring his gut feeling, he took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was thick with years of neglect, each breath a reminder of decay. The sounds of creaking wood echoed like moaned warnings, while graffiti screamed tales of despair on the walls. Mike's heart raced as he pushed deeper, his camera ready to document every spine-tingling encounter. Then the silence broke. A noise shattered the stillness, a low thud, followed by a whisper that seemed very close. Mike's skin prickled, sweat beading on his brow. He turned sharply, but nothing was there. Just then, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." He shook it off. This wasn't the time. With adrenaline pumping, he ventured down a dim corridor lined with faded photographs. Their eyes felt alive, following him. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked again. He wasn't alone. Panic surged within him. He heard footsteps, soft, deliberate. He pressed forward, sensing an unsettling presence nudging at his back. The shadows warped, twisting in the corners of his vision. Just as he turned to flee, a door slammed shut behind him. The air turned icy, and darkness closed in like a vice. Mike's heart raced as he pounded on the door, desperate to escape. "Who's there?" he shouted, but only echoes responded. Trembling hands gripped his camera, capturing the ominous void around him, the door ominously refusing to budge. He had stepped into the unknown, and terror wrapped around him like a serpent. The whispers grew louder, swirling in his mind. Was this a spirit of the past, or a reflection of the regrets in his own life? The shadows loomed ever closer. He glanced nervously down the hallway, searching for a glimmer of hope or a way out, but all he found was darkness surging toward him. The energy pulsed. Was it in the school? Or was it him, too? As the camera flashed in the oppressive darkness, Mike knew this was just the beginning. A haunting journey lay ahead, and he was about to uncover secrets that were best left buried. Which would haunt him more? The demons lurking in the shadows of Ironwood High, or the ghosts he had brought with him? The door continued to hold fast against Mike's frantic pushes. He could feel the cold seep through the wood, merging with every ounce of fear coursing through his veins. The darkness thickened, pulses of shadow moving as if alive. His breath quickened, panic clawing at his throat. "What do you want?" he shouted again, voice cracking, but only silence responded, save the whisper of breath he could have sworn was right behind him. Then it came again. A shuffling, barely perceptible, like feet skimming softly against the floor. Heart thundering in his chest, Mike swung his camera around, snapping a picture, illuminating the corridor just long enough to catch a glimpse of something pale darting into an adjacent room. His instinct screamed at him to follow, to confront the presence in the school, but rationality clawed at his mind. This wasn't a thrill-seeking adventure anymore. This was survival. Shaking, he moved toward the door from which that fleeting shadow had vanished. It creaked open under his hesitant push. Inside, the room was a mausoleum of forgotten memories, dust swirling in the dim light that poured through fractured windows. Desks lay strewn about, some upturned, like a childhood battlefield. And in the far corner, an old chalkboard bore the remnants of lessons long abandoned, the ghostly writing fading into obscurity. Malicious whispers echoed softly around him, a cacophony of unintelligible words that wriggled under the skin, growing louder, more insistent. "Leave! Now!" a voice hissed, sending a shiver racing down his spine. Mike turned wildly, twisting toward the exit, but the doorway was gone, just an impenetrable black void staring back at him. He stumbled backward, scanning the walls for a hidden passage, desperate for an escape. Instead, he found a large, cracked mirror that hung lopsided, reflecting a distorted version of himself. His face was pale, incredulous, and the expression was not just his own. A figure loomed just behind, eyes glistening like black coals. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. It was a reflection, but not of now. The image flickered in his camera, a snapshot capturing a glimpse of a time long past. Faded students, their eyes filled with despair, frozen in a moment Mike could never fully grasp. "What happened to you?" he whispered, horrified. Then with a swift flicker the reflection blurred, solidifying into form. A girl, her face streaked with tears, emerged from the mirror. She was trapped, reaching out, pleading. "Help me!" she screamed, the sound a mix of sorrow and rage, a haunting melody that filled the room. Mike stumbled back, crashing against a desk. He clutched his camera tight, feeling the weight of her pain seep through the lens, through the air, and into his soul. The words echoed in his mind, wrapping around him like chains. "Help me! Help me!" As shadows danced, the air turned electric, shimmering with energy. The room began to warp, closing in on him as if the very walls were alive. Panic surged once again. "No, I can't!" But before he could finish, the floor beneath him buckled, sending him tumbling into darkness. He hit the ground hard, a freezing cold wrapping around him, ripping away fragments of his sanity. The echoes turned to laughter, a chorus of mocking joy that chilled the marrow in his bones. "You shouldn't have come here." Mike gasped for breath as the laughter faded, leaving only stillness and darkness. When he finally found his footing, the school felt different, more alive. Every creak and crack was now a heartbeat, and Mike wasn't sure if it was his or the haunting pulse of Ironwood High. Where was he? Was he dreaming or awake? The world felt unreal, disordered. Then, above the whispering, he heard his own voice rise. "What now?" A sliver of light appeared ahead. Just one thought pushed him forward. To uncover what held this high school captive, to uncover what had trapped that girl inside. But as he stepped toward the light, he felt something tighten around his ankle. The shadows had teeth. "Is this all there is?" he thought, his heart pounding. "Or is there something worse waiting in the depths?" He took a breath filled with frost and ventured deeper into the unknown, the shadows beckoning him to come closer. The shadows pulled him closer, their icy grip tightening around his ankle, causing Mike to stumble. The light ahead flickered like a dying ember, barely illuminating the space as he fought against the pull. His heart raced, pounding in his ears like a war drum, urging him to move, to escape whatever was lurking just out of sight. With every frantic tug, Mike felt the darkness clawing at him, whispering promises of despair. "Help me!" The girl's desperate plea echoed in his mind, swirling with the chaos. He couldn't fail her. Somehow he had to find her, find out why she was trapped here. The shuffling noise resumed, returning with a softer intensity, like footfalls echoing through water. He moved deeper into the gloom, the light growing brighter. It seemed to beckon like a siren to a ship lost at sea. But the shadows wove a web around him, each step further into the school, pulling him deeper into their cold embrace. Suddenly, he fell forward, landing hard on the floor. The light pulsed, illuminating the remnants of what once had been, a gymnasium now long forgotten. The smell of mildew was heavy, nauseating. The gym's walls were covered in peeling paint, and the wood floor was warped, creaking under his weight. Above him, the basketball hoops hung like skeletal arms reaching down. He quickly scrambled to his feet, glancing around, eyes darting for movement. The whispers escalated, filling his head with frantic screams and mournful wails. Shadows played tricks on his mind, contorting into agonized faces that vanished when he blinked. Mike's breath quickened. "Keep it together," he muttered to himself, shaking his head to clear the taunting images. But before he could gather his thoughts, he spotted a door slightly ajar at the far end. Hope surged within him. Maybe there was a way out. He took a step, but stopped as he caught something in his peripheral vision. A figure moved, darting quickly across the opposite side of the gym. Panic erupted in his chest. Was it the girl, or something worse? The shadows swirled around him, whispers intensifying, warning him. "Don't follow!" Ignoring the voice, he sprinted toward the door, heart pounding like thunder. As he reached for the handle, the air around him thickened. The icy fingers of the shadows tightened, as if the school itself was rejecting him. He ripped the door open and stumbled into the next room. It was a corridor, lined with lockers, their surfaces rusted and dented. The light flickered overhead, dimming and brightening in a strobe-like fashion, casting ominous shadows that danced menacingly on the walls. "Help me!" The voice was clearer now, almost tangible. Mike turned, scanning the hallway, catching glimpses of movement in the periphery, shapes that darted just out of sight. Each thud of his heart echoed like a warning bell in the oppressive silence. Then he saw her at the end of the hall, that same girl, her face twisted in anguish, standing at the threshold of a doorway. "Help me!" she cried again, voice pleading, yet strained with a sense of urgency. Something icy gripped his insides at the sight of despair in her eyes. He couldn't look away. "Wait!" he shouted, but the shadows shifted violently, weaving themselves into a barrier between him and her, a wall of dark smoke, writhing and hungry. A fevered sense of dread flooded him. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, but he could feel time slipping away, ticking down to something catastrophic. "Will you save her, or will you become one of them?" The echoes taunted, wrapping around him like a vice. With his heart in his throat, he took a step forward as the shadows lunged toward him, threatening to swallow him whole. Time stretched like a rubber band. Whatever awaited Mike in that darkness, he was no longer just an innocent bystander. He was a choice away from becoming part of Ironwood's horrors, or maybe, just maybe, he could save her. But as he lunged towards that door, darkness roared to life around him, shifting like a living organism, hungry for his soul. What awaited him beyond that threshold? The answer shivered in the cold air, tantalizingly near, yet shrouded in dread. The moment Mike lunged forward, the shadows surged, grappling him like hands coated in ice, pulling him back. His breath caught in his throat, the darkness clawing at his very essence, suffocating and relentless. He felt a primal fear clench his stomach. Terrified whispers wrapped around him, morphing into the sound of countless voices, a cacophony of souls trapped in this hellish place. "Help me!" the girl cried again, but this time it was distorted, twisted, like a mockery of her desperation. It sent a jolt of panic coursing through him. He couldn't think, focus, just push through. Using every ounce of strength, he forced his legs to move. He pushed back against the relentless grip of the shadows, clawing for freedom. With a final surge, he broke free, stumbling through the threshold. A rush of cold air struck his face, a jarring contrast to the oppressive heat of the corridor. He was in a classroom, the door slamming shut behind him, as if sealed by the very darkness he fled. The flickering light overhead buzzed menacingly, illuminating the dust-laden desks and broken chairs. This room felt different, thicker, like a heavy fog wrapping itself around him, stunting his movements. She was still here, he realized, with a mixture of hope and dread. The girl stood in the corner, her image wavering like a mirage. "You have to listen to me," she urged, her eyes locked onto a spot over his shoulder. They're coming." His heart dropped. He turned, but there was nothing there, only a wall of peeling paint and the scattered remnants of forgotten lessons. Mike's instincts screamed at him that he needed to act fast. "Who's coming?" he demanded, his voice trembling, fighting against the fear that threatened to swallow him whole. "They don't want you to save me," she whispered, stepping closer, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "They'll try to stop you. You must find it. Find the source. It's the only way to end this." "What are you talking about? What source?" A trembling hand pointed to a blackened spot on the far wall, an area where the paint was worn away into a jagged shape. With a firm resolve, he approached it. The air chilled around him, a sinister stillness enveloping the room as shadows crept along the floors, creeping closer. "Touch it!" she urged, but her voice flickered, barely clinging to its form, as if the shadows were already stealing her presence. He reached out, fingers trembling, and pressed against the dark warmth. A surge of pain shot through him, as if the wall were electrified. Visions exploded in his mind, flashes of anguished faces, pleas for help, desperate screams echoing from the abyss. "No!" the girl screamed, her form fading. The room quaked, shadows thickened, swirling manically around him. The whispers transformed into a low growl, a warning of the horror closing in. Mike gritted his teeth, pushing through the blinding pain, threatening to take him. "I'm not leaving you," he shouted, fighting against the tide of darkness as it clawed at him, dragging him back into the depths. A pulse echoed through the wall beneath his palm, rippling through him like cold water. Beneath that ghastly surface, he felt something, a heartbeat, steady and insistent, resonating with urgency. The shadows howled, converging on him, hungry. "You cannot stop it. You will be one of us." The girl's voice lingered in his ears, an echo fading like the last breath of a dream. It wasn't just her life at stake. Something deeper and darker loomed, threatening to consume everyone. With one last determined push, he channeled his fear into strength, tearing his hand away from the wall. He staggered back as the air thickened, enveloping him in darkness. The girl's pleas faded, drowned by the roaring shadows. He was out of time. Someone was ready to be awakened. As the classroom dissolved into the swirling void, a new voice resonated, deep and malevolent. "You've awakened me. Now face the consequences." What awaited him next bore the weight of irrevocable choices. Would Mike find a way to save the girl, or would he succumb to the sinister fate lurking in the shadows? The air thickened with malevolent anticipation, promising revelations yet unseen. The darkness swallowed him whole. Mike's heart thudded against his ribs as he stumbled through the void, the walls of the classroom dissolving into an endless black. Panic washed over him in waves. He was losing grip on reality, the weight of the shadows pressing down like a vice. "Mike!" The girl's voice reached him again, distant and desperate. "You can't let them take you!" He grasped at the darkness, struggling to keep his thoughts clear. Somewhere in this wretched realm, he sensed the pulse he had touched, a rhythm that seemed to anchor him in the chaos. But now, that anchor was threatening to slip away, consumed by the encroaching void. "Where are you?" he shouted into the blackness, voice echoing, swallowed by silence. Each breath was a battle, each heartbeat a reminder of what was at stake. Was she still there? Would he have the chance to save her? Suddenly, the shadows writhed, and a figure began to coalesce before him. It was less a person and more a grotesque mirage, a twisted reflection of something dark and unyielding. "You seek the source," it rasped, voice like nails scraping against concrete. "But do you understand the cost?" Mike felt a chill creep over him, wrapping around his spine. "What cost?" he demanded, fists clenched. "Tell me what I need to do." The figure laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that chilled him to the bone. "This is no game, this is retribution. The darkness festers within and around you. To save her, you must embrace it, or join the forgotten." Rage surged within him. I won't accept that." He took a step back, the black consuming him like thick smoke. The girl's ethereal form flickered in his mind, a beacon of hope lost in this haze of despair. "Focus, Mike!" she cried out again, her voice now a thread of light piercing the darkness. "You have to fight. Use the pulse. Find the source." With a renewed sense of purpose, he forced himself to search through the depths of his memory for that rhythmic thrum. Closing his eyes, he felt for it, connecting deeply, yearning for the warmth buried beneath the layers of fear. The shadows surged around him, hissing like venomous serpents. "Do not fight it!" they hissed, their whisper a symphony of malice. He could feel their cold breath against the nape of his neck, their presence hungry, leaching onto his very essence. "Embrace the darkness," the figure urged, advancing with a predator's grace. "Join us, and all will be revealed." But Mike fought against the pull, hands shaking as if fighting against a current. "No, I refuse," he screamed back, pushing against the weight. Like a bright star in endless night, he felt the pulse grow stronger, thrumming under his skin, a heartbeat that resonated with a power he could barely comprehend. "I will save her," he murmured, conviction burning through the shadows, threatening to consume him. With a fierce determination, he dug deep, channeling his fear into strength. A sudden flash erupted, illuminating a narrow path through the darkness. It felt like stepping into a storm, wind and shadows swirling violently around him. As he charged forward, propelled by the pulse that now resonated within him, the shadows screamed in rage. "You will not escape!" they howled, their voices a mixture of anguish and fury. But Mike didn't look back. He sprinted ahead, urged by the vision of the girl beckoning him, her face a beacon in the turmoil. And just as he thought he reached her, the ground beneath him shifted. He stumbled, the dark energies racing to drag him under. "Hold on!" he yelled, but the voice of the awakening darkness laughed again, a sound dripping with malice. "You are tethered forever. She is lost." Time stretched, the very air thickening, wrapping around him as he fought against the tide. But with one final push, he felt a surge of energy rip through him, a bond now stronger than the shadows. "I'm coming for you!" he shouted, breaking through the suffocating haze. The darkness shrieked, claws grasping at him as he lunged forward into the light, where the pulse roared like thunder in his ears. Everything trembled, reality warping around him. Then silence. Mike landed hard on a cold, hard surface, gasping for air. He blinked against the brightness, heart racing. But what he saw chilled him to the bone. He wasn't in the classroom anymore. Around him loomed towering walls, painted in splattered crimson, resembling jagged teeth ready to close in. This wasn't an escape. It was a new prison. The shadows still feasted at the edges, whispering promises of despair. And as he looked up, a familiar figure stepped from the shadows, eyes gleaming with malevolent glee. "Welcome back, Mike," it purred. "Now let's see what choices you'll make next." The weight of his decisions loomed heavy on his shoulders. He had escaped one nightmare but stepped into another. What would he have to sacrifice this time? The figure's smile twisted into something more sinister as it advanced, predatory gleam flickering in its eyes. Panic set in as Mike's mind raced, frantically searching for a way out. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. "Choices, Mike," it replied, voice dripping with a sickening sweetness. "Every choice reveals a piece of your soul." The walls pulsed. the crimson splatters appearing almost alive, creeping closer like blood ready to spill. A low whimper escaped Mike, the fear deepening as he realized the vast emptiness behind him. The darkness hungered, lingering just outside the reach of the flickering light above. "Do you remember this place?" the creature taunted, fingers curling around the edges of reality. "Your past is riddled with failures and fears. How many lives did you leave behind to escape?" I don't want any of this," Mike stammered, retreating as shadows pooled at his feet, slowly inching toward him. The ground felt like it was breathing beneath him, alive and pulsing with the despair he fought so hard against. "They abandoned you, didn't they?" It pressed, stepping closer. "You were always too weak, too kind. And look where that has left you." Anger flared inside him, a defiance against the creeping hopelessness. "That's not true," he yelled, the pulse inside him thrumming as if in answer. "I've fought to hold on to my humanity." The creature laughed again, a sound that rattled every nerve in his body. "Humanity? What a quaint notion! It is nothing without sacrifice. You will break, Mike. You must." With a deep breath, he forced himself to remember why he had fought so desperately. The image of the girl, her face radiant, surged in his mind, a guiding light amidst the falling shadows. He focused all his energy, channeling it through the pulse that surged in his veins. "Leave her out of this!" he shouted, heart racing as the walls drew closer. "If you want me, then take me." The creature's grin widened, displaying teeth sharp as razors. "You think you know what that means, to be taken by the dark? Very well, let's see how far you're willing to go for her." Suddenly, the blood-red walls drew back, and floorboards shuddered beneath him as they pulled apart. The shadows exploded, creeping and crawling towards him like ravenous beasts. Mike stumbled backward, nearly losing his footing as he felt the ground drop out from underneath him. "Face your past," the creature hissed, and the shadows twisted into his memories, warping into faces and voices that swirled around them like a cyclone. Friends lost, fears realized, regrets piling high like mountains. "Stop! Enough!" Mike cried, falling to his knees as images of his failures bombarded him. He felt weakness seep into his bones, the shadows tightening their grip with every fleeting moment. "You can't escape what's inside you," the creature sneered, looming above him as his pulse began to fade. "Join the forgotten. It will be so easy." But something within him flickered anew, refusing to succumb to despair. Drawing on the strength of the pulse, he stood up, defiance igniting every fiber of his being. "I will not be defined by my past." In an instant, the ground beneath him lit up, releasing a blinding wave of pure energy that pushed back against the shadows, sending them shrieking into the recesses of the room. Time seemed to stretch as Mike felt the power surge through him, a force unmatched, driving the figure back. But then he noticed the shadows surrounding the girl, their dark tendrils reaching for her, pulling her further into a pit of despair. "No!" he yelled, terror clawing at his throat. He lunged toward the dark vortex surrounding her, a last desperate attempt to pull her back to safety. The creature cackled from behind. "Let her go, Mike! Save yourself! It's your only choice!" The moment hung in the air, suffocating and heavy, as he felt the pull of the shadows at his heels. But somewhere deep, he knew the cost of abandoning her would be far worse. With a final scream, he tore through the last veil of darkness, reaching out for her. Would it be enough? And just then, he felt a chilling flicker beneath his skin. The price for saving her became painfully clear. What was becoming of him? This dance with shadows was only just beginning. What would he be willing to sacrifice next? The energy coursed through Mike, illuminating the darkness like a beacon, but he felt it shifting, the pulse in him writhing, tangled with something far more sinister. Tendrils of shadow wrapped tighter around his limbs, pulling him down, down into the abyss that yawned like a greedy mouth. "Mike! Save me!" A whisper threaded through the shadowy chaos, piercing the veil of his consciousness. It was her voice, The girl, the very source of his strength, now offset by the dread coiling around him. The darkness shifted, her image distorting in the swirls, a cruel mockery of the brightness he'd fought for. With every breath, he felt the weight of his sacrifice pressing heavier. The shadows slithered and beckoned, voices rising in a cacophony of past failures. "You can't protect her. You didn't protect anyone," they hissed, each haunting echo stinging like a slap. "Shut up!" he yelled, rage igniting in his chest. But the shadows didn't relent. They crawled from the recesses of his mind, memories, fragments of his mistakes, friends he had failed, moments of weakness unearthing themselves like weeds in the dark. "Let her go!" he screamed, lunging forward, but the creatures only tightened their grip, dragging him back. His heart raced as darkness flooded his vision, swallowing the flickering light. With raw desperation, he fought against the pull. "I won't let you take her," he bellowed, the defiance surging through every fiber of his being. Somehow he managed to rise, pushing against the weight with a primal scream that reverberated through the air. Suddenly he felt a response in the shadows. The very ground trembled, and for a fleeting moment the darkness faltered, trembling against his force. "She's not yours to take," he declared, channeling the power, the pulse inside him. The creature recoiled, its laughter morphing into a guttural growl. "You think you can command the shadows?" It spat. "Foolish boy. You're merely another sacrifice, another pawn." But in that turbulent moment Mike glimpsed something, a flicker of hope, a memory of laughter, the girl's smile radiating against the torment of the shadows. He grasped that thought tightly, a lifeline in the uproar. "Together we're stronger," he cried, clenching his fists. The shadows shrieked, retreating and reshaping, coiling into serpentine forms that writhed and twisted in defiance. As flickers of light erupted from his core, he felt strength surge through him once more. "Join me!" he shouted into the chaos, directing his call toward the pulsing darkness. And then, a moment, a breath hanging precariously in the air. The darkness trembled, and for a heartbeat he thought he could see her. The girl, emerging from the void, wide-eyed and reaching for him. The tendrils faltered, but the creature was relentless. It surged forward, shrieking in wrath. "You cannot give her hope! You will suffer for this!" With a fury, it slammed a shadowy fist into the ground, and the very earth shook violently, sending Mike tumbling. His hand slipped from her grasp, scattering hope like ashes in the wind. Panic clawed at his throat as he spiraled back into shadow. The girl screamed, her voice echoed, trapped in a vortex of despair. He felt its cold fingers closing around his heart. His mind raced. "What will it cost?" echoed in his thoughts, each syllable a drumbeat of dread as despair began to seep into his bones once more. He knew he had to act. But survive at what cost? In that dark spiral, a question loomed, heavy as the weight of the night. How much can one sacrifice for love before it consumes you whole? The shadows surged, writhing like a beast awakened from a deep slumber. Mike felt the darkness clinging to him, relentless and cold as it encircled him tighter, suffocating every ounce of hope. Dread trickled through his veins, making his heart pound like a war drum. "Mike!" The girl's voice lanced through the chaos once more, raw with fear and desperation. "You have to fight!" With a renewed sense of urgency, Mike clawed at the shadows. He couldn't let them drown her voice. Gritting his teeth, he focused on the warmth of her memory, the laughter they shared, and the moments that felt so vibrant. But the darkness taunted him, eager to extinguish that spark. "Is this your last stand?" it crooned, its voice thick and slippery. "So brave, yet so foolish." "Shut up!" he spat, spitting into the dark void. But it only laughed, a sound filled with malice that echoed off the walls of his mind. He felt the shadows brush against his skin, cold and wet, as they slipped over him like a second skin, suffocating his defiance. And then, blinding terror struck as the ground beneath him buckled again, cracking open to reveal a chasm of swirling shadows. The darkness pulled him closer, the pit a hungry maw waiting to swallow him whole. He could almost see the faces of those he had failed, their eyes hollow, mocking him. "Look at you!" the creature howled, the shadows flickering with its fury. "Here you are, on the brink of despair, watching her suffer because of your weakness. You could have saved her." No, he refused to believe it. He fought against the shadows, thrusting his arms outward as though he could break free. The walls of darkness closed in like claustrophobic hands, and every instinct screamed for him to submit. But in that moment of sheer madness, a surge of heat erupted from within him. "Let her go!" he roared, summoning the very essence of his being into the light surrounding him. Flashes of energy ignited, illuminating the murky blackness, but it flickered like a dying flame caught in a tempest. "Let her go," he begged again, more desperate now, as images of her past glimmered in the light. The girl's fragile smile, her eyes sparkling with mischievous joy, reminded him what was precious. Mike clawed again, anchoring himself to that memory, willing it to surge even brighter against the black tide. But the darkness bellowed. A force smashed into him. He spiraled backward, tumbling deeper into the void, and the illusion of her faded into whispers. "You cannot escape. You will suffer for your choices." Panic clawed at his throat, turning his vision blurry. The stark reality of fear knotted in his gut. He could lose her forever if he didn't act now. "I will not lose myself to you," he shouted defiantly, gasping for breath. Suddenly, an icy grip tightened around his ankles, pulling him inexorably further into the chasm of despair. It felt like gripping a nightmare, unsure if he was hallucinating or confronting reality. The echoes of lost souls surrounded him, their lament seeping into him like tar. "Sweet release awaits." The darkness crooned, inviting him to surrender to it, offering oblivion as an escape. His resolve wavered as he struggled, but then a flicker, a shining glimmer caught his eye, a light piercing the encroaching dark. It was her. There she was again, just beyond reach, her face glowing with determination. "Fight, Mike! Together!" she shouted, diamond-eyed with belief, as she hurtled towards him through the veil between light and dark. Her presence flooded him with an intensity he didn't know was possible. He felt the tides shifting. The darkness shrieked in fury, realizing it was losing its grip. Could he break free? As he pulled against the shadows one last time, the overwhelming weight of terror warred with the fire of his will. Would he find a way to cut through the veil or get consumed entirely? And just as he felt the darkness beginning to unravel, an earth-shattering roar erupted from the abyss. What was about to emerge from the depths, and would he have the strength to confront it? The roar echoed around him, reverberating through the dark, twisting chasm. Mike felt the vibrations in his bones, a signal that something ancient and terrible was stirring. The shadows surrounding him now trembled, as if afraid of whatever may come. The glow of her light flickered, thrumming with urgency. "Mike!" she cried, desperation woven through her voice. "Hold on! We can do this!" But the noise grew louder, mingling with the whispers of the shadowy souls, their lamentations swirling into a cacophony that clawed at his sanity. "You are not strong enough," they sneered. "Fight it all you want. You know how this ends." "No!" he shouted back, clenching his fists. With each passing moment, dread dragged him deeper. It was an endless ebb and flow, hope rising only to crash back down again. The pit yawned wide, unfurling with grotesque shapes that writhed and twisted, things he couldn't look at too closely, or they might take root in his mind. "Fight for me!" Her voice pierced him with resolve, but the raw fear that tainted the air made his heart thud erratically. He glanced up, the glimmer of light flickering like a candle in the wind. If he lost that light, he'd be entirely consumed. More shadows erupted from the depths, forming a swirling mass that coalesced into a grotesque face, twisted with hate and malice. "You dare defy me?" it hissed, each word like shards of ice. "You're nothing, just a fleeting thought, destined for darkness." "Shut up!" Mike roared, his voice ripping through the suffocating air. He felt a heat rising in his chest, bright and searing, tinged with desperation. But just as the flames inside him flickered to life, a huge surge of darkness lashed out, wrapping itself around his throat like a serpent, squeezing tighter. He gasped, choking on despair, barely aware of the swirls of despair distorting against his skin. "Mike!" she shouted again, but the shadows cackled, drowning her out. "You cannot save her!" Panic surged through him, sharp and relentless. The urgency to act slammed against his chest with every rising wave of terror. He couldn't let her down. Not now. He fought against the constriction, a primal instinct to survive creeping up from deep within. The ground shook violently. "It's coming," a whisper echoed, mingled with the vibrations of his pulse. "It's hungry." Then from the depths of the chasm, something clawed its way up. A massive shadow-shrouded figure, its features obscured, but the menace radiating from it palpable. The air thickened, dread soaking into Mike's skin. It loomed closer, tendrils slithering from its form, grasping and pulling. "Embrace your fate," it roared, each syllable a death knell. "No, I won't," Mike cried, the light surrounding him flickering with defiance. He surged forward, fueled by the image of her face, and he could feel her warmth. "Together!" he shouted, and in that moment he reached out, channeling every ounce of energy he had. But as he thrust his hands towards the figure, a tremendous force slammed into him, sending him staggering backward. The light dimmed, and Mike stumbled, teetering on the brink of the abyss. He could feel the shadow demon pulling him closer, the chilling breath scraping against his neck. It wanted him. It wanted all of him. Would he be able to muster the strength to face the emerging terror, or would he be overtaken by the very darkness he sought to vanquish? The shadows threatened to swallow him whole, and for a fleeting second he hesitated. What did it mean to fight when the heartbeat of despair thumped so loudly? Would he succumb to the seductive whispers, or had their feast only just begun? As the shadow figure loomed larger, its limbs stretching out like skeletal fingers yearning to grasp him, terror gripped Mike's soul. He felt the overwhelming sense of dread pushing against his chest, every heartbeat echoing the pain of isolation. Yet amidst the chaos, the flickering light of the girl anchored him. "Mike," she called, her voice fierce and unyielding, "you're stronger than this. Remember who you are." He took a deep breath, grounding himself against the suffocating darkness. "I will not let you take me," he shouted defiantly, driving back the shadows. The weight of his past failures surged within him, but this time he would not let that burden define him. "I won't lose you." Mike fought against the cold grip around his throat, pulling memories of laughter, warmth, and hope into the forefront of his mind. The girl's joyous smile, their dreams, the light they could bring to each other. "Hold on!" Her voice echoed like a heartbeat in the depths. "I believe in you." Fueled by her faith, Mike felt a strength boiling deep within him. The shadows roared in fury around him, desperate to extinguish the light burgeoning inside. But he had tasted the bitterness of despair, and unwilling to join the forgotten, he pushed back harder. "I choose hope," he declared, voice rising above the cacophony. With a surge of energy, he stepped forward, arms outstretched toward the looming darkness. "You will not control me. You will not control her. We are not alone." In that moment, as if struck by lightning, a pulse erupted from him. A wave of incandescent light surged forth, illuminating the void. The shadows shrieked, their forms contorting in agony as they were forced back. "Together!" the girl shouted, echoing his resolve as her own energy intertwined with his, a radiant force against the encroaching darkness. The shadow figure recoiled, rage boiling in its twisted form. "You think you can defeat me?" You are but a flicker in the vast night." "No," Mike shot back, feeling the power within swell. "Together we are a storm. We've fought too long to let you win." The energy coalesced, a dazzling array of colors shining brighter than anything he had ever seen, rupturing the dark skies like a comet striking the earth. It surged forward, swallowing the shadows in its wake, leaving only despair's remnants trembling at the edges. As Mike and the girl fought, the shadow demon shrieked in hopeless rage, clawing at the air as it twisted and writhed against the force of light. "You will pay for this," it bellowed, desperation lacing its tone. "Not if we have anything to do with it," Mike shouted, determination flooding through him like fire. With one final push, fueled by love and courage, their energy met the darkness head-on, a blinding explosion of light resonating through the shadows. And just like that, the chasm began to collapse. Layers of despair peeled away, revealing glimpses of the past. Lost souls entwined in shadows found solace amidst the light. The echoes of their screams turned from cries of anguish to whispers of gratitude. As the shadows receded, shaking the very foundations of Ironwood High, Mike felt the pressure ease. The figure's roar faded into silence, surrendering to the inevitable. The light could not be extinguished. The girl stood before him, her form now clear and bright, the darkness around their feet dissolving like mist before the sun. "You did it," she said, awe and relief shimmering in her eyes. "You saved me." "Together," he insisted, trembling at the enormity of what they had fought against. "Together, we saved everyone." The shadows dissipated entirely, leaving clarity in their wake. World around them began to materialize. The crumbling walls of Ironwood transformed, revealing vibrant colors and life. No longer a prison, but a monument to their shared strength. "Is it over?" he wondered aloud, scanning the revitalized surroundings, still unsure it was real. "For now," she replied with a gentle smile. "But always remember, the darkness will always linger at the edges. We must choose the light every time." Mike nodded, feeling the weight lift from his chest. The horror of Ironwood faded into a memory, replaced with the promise of new paths forged through resilience and hope. As they stepped into the sun-drenched world together, hope surged within him. Life awaited them beyond the shadows. He grasped her hand, the warmth of connection grounding him as they walked away. "You ready?" she asked, glancing at him with an infectious grin. "More than ever," he replied, heart racing with anticipation, leaving the cursed shadows behind forever. And together they ventured into the light, embracing the countless possibilities that awaited them beyond the walls of Ironwood. Now that you've journeyed with Mike through the dark corners of Ironwood High and saw him triumph, don't wait. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep the light shining bright. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending, because your voice matters. And instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and keep the adventure alive. Don't hesitate.